At Thanksgiving dinner, my wife shoved me aside. Move. This seat is for my ex, my daughter's real father. When I demanded an explanation, my stepdaughter yelled, "Just leave, you're not even family." So I left silently. That night, I revoked their access to my life, and when they woke up to reality, they started calling me nonstop. Hey Reddit, grab some snacks and strap in because this one's going to be a bit long and intense. Name's Kevin, 30 male. I married Ada 3 years ago because I'm apparently a sucker for a sob story and a pretty face. She had this whole wounded bird thing going on when we met at a company mixer. Her ex Mike had abandoned her and their daughter Ruby when the kid was 9, leaving her struggling to make ends meet. She worked as a receptionist at a dental office, barely scraping by, and I was the electrical engineer pulling six figures who thought he could fix everything. Classic hero complex. I know that now. I've got a scar running down the left side of my face from a warehouse accident when I was 22. Forklift collision, metal shelf to the face, 70 stitches. It's not subtle. Most women either stare too long or work real hard not to stare at all. Some are polite about it, some aren't. Dating got a lot more complicated after that accident. You learn pretty quick who's actually interested and who's just being nice until they can exit the conversation. Ada was different. The first time we met, she glanced at it once, then looked me in the eye like a normal person and kept talking. Never made it weird. After years of awkward first dates that went nowhere, that actually mattered. The first time I met her, she was standing by the refreshment table looking lost. I made some dumb joke about the cheap refreshments and she laughed. We talked for an hour about nothing important. She was charming without trying too hard. After years of dating women who couldn't wait to tell me their follower count, that seemed real. She told me about Ruby on our third date. Just laid it out straight. Single mom, ex-husband was a flake, doing her best. I respected the honesty. Our first 6 months were good. Really good. She'd pack lunches for me before work shifts. We'd watch movies on her couch after Ruby went to bed. She'd text me random stuff during the day. Nothing crazy, just normal relationship stuff that worked. I met Ruby a month in. 12 years old, about to turn 13. Shy, polite. The kind of kid who said please and thank you without anyone reminding her. We bonded over video games. She seemed genuinely happy to have a stable guy around. We dated for 8 months before I proposed. Looking back, the red flags were there, but I made excuses for all of them. She'd get irritated when I spent time with my buddy Kyle from work. She'd make passive-aggressive comments about my hobbies. She'd guilt me whenever I didn't immediately drop everything to handle whatever crisis she'd manufactured that day. Always something urgent that needed my immediate attention and wallet. But she was also charming when she wanted to be. She'd show up at my apartment with dinner after a long shift. She'd remember small details about my day. I proposed at a restaurant she'd been mentioning for months. Just a quiet booth and a ring I'd saved up for. She cried when I asked. Said yes right away. Ruby seemed excited when Ada told her the next day. The wedding was small. 60 people at a local venue. I paid for everything because Ada didn't have savings. $8,000 total. Her mother made a speech about how Ada finally found a reliable man. Mike didn't show up. Ruby was the junior bridesmaid and seemed genuinely happy. After the wedding, I paid off Ada's credit card debt. $7,200 she'd accumulated being a single mom. I moved them into my house, a 3-bedroom I'd bought 2 years earlier in a decent school district. Got Ruby enrolled in a better private school with smaller class sizes and actual funding for their programs. Started a college fund for her, putting away $300 a month. I played stepdad at every school event and parent-teacher conference. Showed up for soccer games even though Ruby wasn't particularly athletic. Helped with homework. Taught her to drive when she turned 16. Did all the dad things because nobody else was doing them. Ada quit her receptionist job 6 months after the wedding. Said she wanted to focus on being a better wife and mother. The job paid $32,000 a year with benefits. Losing that income hurt, but I figured if it made the household run smoother, fine. That's when things started changing. She got comfortable. Too comfortable. Stopped packing my lunches. Stopped with the random texts during the day. Spent more time on her phone than talking to me. Started complaining about the house, wanting to redecorate everything. I paid for new living room furniture. $4,000. She picked everything out, had it delivered, then complained that the couch color didn't match what she'd imagined. Ruby turned from decent kid into entitled teenager basically overnight. I bought her a used Honda Civic for her 16th birthday. Reliable car, low mileage, perfect for a new driver. She complained it wasn't an Accord. Said her friends had nicer cars. The phone I upgraded her to wasn't the latest model. The clothes I bought weren't the right brands. The monthly allowance I gave her wasn't enough. She started talking to me like I was the help instead of the guy funding her entire lifestyle. Ada encouraged it. I'd hear her on the phone with her mother and sister Caroline, talking about how I was useful but boring, how Mike had been exciting even if he was unreliable, how she'd married me for stability. I know I'm not exciting. I don't do spontaneous weekend trips or surprise romantic gestures. I'm the guy who pays bills on time and fixes things when they break. But I showed up every day, treated them both with respect, and never made them feel like they owed me anything. Apparently, that wasn't worth much. Maybe I should have seen it coming. Guy with a face like mine doesn't exactly have women lining up. I knew that when I married her. Thought loyalty and showing up mattered more than being the exciting guy. Turns out I was just the stable guy. Kyle noticed the change before I admitted it to myself. We'd grab lunch at the site most days, and he'd listen to me complain about the latest drama at home. Man, you know she's playing you, he said one afternoon, 3 weeks before Thanksgiving. Ada's got you trained like a show dog. It's not that bad. You paid for her mother's dental work last month. Her mother. He had a point. I'd written a check for $3,200 to cover Ada's mom's root canal because Ada cried about it. Never got a thank you from either of them. And what about that cruise Ada wants? The one that costs $5,000? She just wants to do something nice for us. Brother, when's the last time she did something nice for you that didn't cost you money? I laughed it off then. Told him he was being cynical. Wish I'd listened. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, Ada started acting strange. Secretive phone calls where she'd leave the room, hiding her screen when I walked into the room, smiling at text messages and then quickly deleting them. She said she was planning something special for the holiday. I figured she was organizing a surprise or maybe finally putting effort into the marriage. Wrong on both counts. I tried asking her about it. She'd just smile and say, "You'll see on Thanksgiving." Her voice sounded off though, not excited, something else. The night before Thanksgiving, Ruby hit me up for $200 for Black Friday shopping. I reminded her about her $300 monthly allowance and said no. She lost it. Complete meltdown in the kitchen about how I was ruining her life, and all her friends got to go shopping, but she was stuck at home because I was too cheap. Then came the real punch. She screamed that I wasn't her real dad anyway, that she couldn't wait until she turned 18 so she could leave, that Mike would have given her the money without making it a big deal. The whole show. Ada stood in the doorway the entire time and watched without saying a word to defend me. When Ruby finally stormed off, I asked Ada if she was going to back me up on this. She told me Ruby was just being a teenager, and I shouldn't take it personally. I pointed out that Ruby had just said I wasn't her real dad. Ada shrugged and said that was just factual. That's when I should have known what was coming. Kyle called that night to wish me a happy Thanksgiving. I was sitting in my garage trying to figure out when everything had gone sideways. He could hear the stress in my voice and offered to come by the next day to bring some sanity to the chaos. I told him it was a family thing, and I'd survive. He made some joke about how Thanksgiving with my wife's family might actually be a hostage situation. I laughed, but it sounded fake even to me. Kyle's instincts were usually right. I wish I'd taken him up on that offer. I spent Thanksgiving morning prepping the dining room. Ada had insisted on hosting this year, which was unusual since she typically pushed for us to go to her mother's place. I set up the table, arranged the chairs, made sure everything looked perfect for what she kept calling her special dinner. That's when Mike walked in, like he owned the place. Ada let him in through the garage, all smiles and warm greetings like they were old friends reuniting instead of a deadbeat ex-husband who hadn't seen his daughter in 7 years. He greeted me with this cocky grin and thanked me for taking care of his girls. His girls. Like he had any claim to that title. Before I could respond, Ada steered him toward the dining room. I followed, carrying the serving dishes, trying to figure out what was happening. Her mother and sister Caroline were already seated. Caroline caught my eye and shook her head slightly, like she was trying to warn me. That's when I noticed where Mike was headed. Straight to the head of the table. My spot. Ada, what's going on? She turned with that practiced, innocent look. I invited Mike to join us. It's important for Ruby to have her real father here. Her real father. I set down the dishes. You mean the guy who hasn't shown up in 7 years? Don't make this dramatic. Mike wants to reconnect with his daughter. By sitting in my chair at my table in my house? Mike settled in like he belonged there. Ada grabbed my arm and physically shoved me toward a folding chair against the wall. Not even at the table. You can sit there. This is family time. I looked at Ruby, who was staring at her plate, waited for her to object, to say something about the man who'd been her father for the last 3 years. She wouldn't even meet my eyes. I said her name once. Gave her one more chance. Her head snapped up with pure contempt. If you're not satisfied with the seating arrangements, then get out. Nobody's forcing you to stay. Her grandmother clapped. Actually clapped like this was a show. Mike leaned back in my chair and smirked, telling me it was family dinner and I should understand. Ada crossed her arms and waited, probably expecting me to either submit and take that wall chair or make a scene. The whole thing was a setup. A coordinated ambush designed to put me in my place and show me where I ranked in this household. Dead last. Caroline was watching me carefully now, her expression somewhere between pity and anger. She was the only one who looked uncomfortable with what was happening. I stood there for maybe 10 seconds. Ada was waiting for me to break. Ruby was practically daring me to challenge her. Mike was enjoying every second of his triumph. I grabbed my jacket and keys without saying a word. Ada's voice had an edge of panic when she asked where I was going. I didn't answer. Just walked out, got in my truck, and drove. They wanted me gone. Message received. But they were about to get a reality check. I drove straight to Kyle's apartment. He opened the door in sweatpants, clearly surprised to see me at 4 in the afternoon on Thanksgiving. I gave him the short version. Kyle's expression went from surprised to dark in about 2 seconds. In your house, the house you pay for. In my house, at my table, with her whole family watching. He stepped aside. Get in here. We've got work to do. I need to lock them out of everything, right now. Then let's make it hurt. This is why Kyle was my best friend. We sat at his kitchen table and started cataloging my entire financial life. Every account, every service, every bill, every subscription. Everything. Took us an hour and 15 minutes to compile the complete list. It was eye-opening how much I'd tied to her. Joint checking, credit cards, car insurance, cell phones, streaming services, cloud storage, house cleaning, gym membership, Ruby's phone and apps, the meal kit service Ada ordered once, hated, but refused to cancel. 47 items total. 47 ways she'd gotten comfortable living off my income. Then we got to work. First move was the joint checking account. $34,000 sitting there from my bonuses, my salary, my savings. She'd contributed exactly $0 to that account since quitting her job. Kyle pulled up my bank's website and walked me through opening a new individual account at a different bank. He had me set it up with his address as the mailing address, so she couldn't intercept any paperwork. 7 minutes later, $34,000 was secured in an account only I could access. Kyle moved down the list. Credit cards next. I had 2 in my name with her as an authorized user. One had a $20,000 limit. The other had a $20,000 limit. She'd maxed out about $8,000 between them. I called both companies and explained I was going through a divorce, needed to remove an authorized user, and wanted to cancel the cards entirely. They didn't ask questions. Within 10 minutes, both cards were canceled. New ones would arrive at Kyle's place in 5 business days. Kyle noted that she'd probably try to use them tomorrow when she went Black Friday shopping. That was going to be a real interesting moment at the register. I could picture it. Her cart full of stuff she didn't need, pulling out the card with confidence, watching the cashier's face when it declined. Priceless. Car insurance came next. The Camry she drove had the title in my name, registration in my name, and insurance obviously in my name. She was just listed as an authorized driver. I called the insurance company and explained I was separating from my spouse and needed to remove her as a driver effective immediately. The agent processed it without much fuss. The car itself would stay insured under my name until the court sorted out who got what. Kyle asked about the house. She was still living there. I told him I'd file for temporary orders tomorrow, but first I needed a lawyer. He said his sister Janet was a divorce attorney who handled family law and didn't mess around. Expensive, but the best. I told him to set up a meeting for tomorrow if she was available. He sent a text to his sister right then, explained the situation briefly, and asked if what we'd done so far was legally sound. His phone buzzed back a minute later. Janet responding. Kyle read it and looked at me. She said cutting off joint accounts and credit cards was smart. Removing her as an authorized driver was fine. Canceling services and subscriptions in my name was totally within my rights. Just don't touch anything that could be considered marital property or look like sabotage. No selling stuff, no damaging anything, no changing locks yet. Save that for the court order. Good to know I'd stayed on the right side of the line. Cell phones. Family plan with 3 lines costing me $220 a month. With Janet's clearance, I suspended Ada's and Ruby's lines with termination set for 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. We kept working through the list. Canceled Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, HBO Max, Spotify Premium, Ruby's gaming subscription. Each cancellation felt like removing another chain. Kyle asked about the house security system. I had a doorbell camera, motion sensors, and app-controlled locks. The whole smart home setup I'd installed last year. I changed the master password to something she'd never guess and revoked her access to the app. She was now locked out of the house security system entirely. Couldn't see who was at the door, couldn't check the cameras, couldn't unlock anything remotely. Changed the Wi-Fi password too. Set up a new network name and password. Her devices would no longer connect automatically. She'd wake up tomorrow with no internet access and no way to fix it without calling the provider. My phone started ringing. AITA. I silenced it without looking. Canceled her gym membership at that expensive place downtown. The house cleaning service. $90 per visit, twice a month. Subscription boxes she never opened. Locked down online shopping accounts. Removed her access to my Amazon Prime. Canceled the car wash membership. Every single thing. By the time we finished, I'd systematically removed every piece of financial access she had. Every convenience. Every service. Every little luxury she'd gotten used to over the past 3 years. Kyle leaned back and looked at the spreadsheet. 47 items handled. Total monthly savings for me was about $3,200. I hadn't realized I was spending that much per month on services for them. $3,200 a month, almost 40 grand a year, on conveniences for 2 people who just humiliated me at my own table. My phone was blowing up now. Multiple calls from multiple numbers. I'd put it on Do Not Disturb, but I could see the screen lighting up constantly. Around 7 p.m., I turned my phone over to check the notifications. 35 missed calls, just in the past 3 hours since I'd walked out. The panic was real. Kyle asked if I was okay. I told him I felt clear-headed for the first time in months. He said that's because I was taking control back. My phone buzzed with another call, this time from Ada's mother. I declined. Kyle offered me his guest room for as long as I needed it. I thanked him. He said he wanted front row seats to this show anyway. Ada was going to lose her mind when she woke up tomorrow and realized nothing worked. I smiled for the first time that day and agreed. Let her sit in the mess she created. I turned my phone off completely and spent the rest of the evening helping Kyle prep his turkey for his own Thanksgiving dinner. Around 11 that night, I turned my phone back on just to check the damage. 83 missed calls, 97 text messages, 6 voicemails. I turned it back off without reading any of them. Tomorrow I'd meet with Janet. Tomorrow I'd start the legal process. Tomorrow I'd begin the official end of this marriage. Kyle's sister Janet met with us Friday morning at her office downtown. She was sharp, late 30s. Kyle had filled her in on the basics before we arrived. She asked me to confirm the details. Wife invited her ex to Thanksgiving, humiliated me in my own home. Stepdaughter told me to leave. I confirmed that summed it up nicely. She asked if I'd already locked down finances. I told her every account and every service. She smiled and said that made her job easier. We spent the next hour going over the details. I owned the house outright, bought it before we met. Deed was in my name only. Mortgage had been paid off last year. Both cars were in my name, titles and registration. I was the sole income earner. Ada had quit her job voluntarily 6 months after the wedding. Janet explained there'd be some community property arguments since we were married, but with the house being mine before the marriage and me being the sole income, we could work with this. I asked about Ruby. Janet asked if I'd legally adopted her. I said no. Ada had kept putting it off, saying we'd do it eventually. Janet said that meant I had zero legal obligation to her. Legally, I was clear. Kyle jumped in and mentioned that her bio dad had shown up yesterday for the first time in 7 years. Janet said it seemed like he should be the one handling his kid. She outlined the plan. She'd draft a cease and desist letter to Mike informing him that I was no longer supporting his child and he needed to step up. She'd also draft divorce papers going for a clean split. I'd keep everything in my name. Ada would get nothing. No spousal support since the marriage was under 5 years, and she'd quit her job voluntarily. I asked how fast this could happen. She said if Ada didn't fight it, 3 months. If she did fight, 6 to 8 months. But based on what I'd told her, Ada didn't have the resources to fight. I spent the rest of Friday morning signing paperwork and writing checks. $5,000 retainer for Janet. Worth every cent. Monday morning, I called Ruby's private school. The admissions director sounded confused when I explained I was calling to inform them I would not be covering any future tuition. Spring semester started in January, and I wanted them to know now that Ruby's biological father, Mike Callahan, needed to be contacted regarding enrollment. The director mentioned I was listed as the parent on all the paperwork. I clarified that I was the stepfather, never legally adopted her, and was currently divorcing her mother. If Mike wanted his daughter in their school, he could pay for it. After I hung up, I got a text from Caroline. Different from all the panic messages from Ada. She said we needed to talk and asked me to call her. When I called back, she sounded relieved. Thank God. I've been trying to reach you since Thursday. What's going on, Caroline? I'm not calling to defend what Ada did. That was completely messed up. I told her not to invite Mike. Why are you calling then? Because you need to understand something. Ada's been planning this for weeks. She thought if she made you jealous, you'd fight harder for her. She's been texting Mike for a month. Mom encouraged it. Said you'd been getting too comfortable and needed to be reminded of your place. I actually laughed. My place. I know how it sounds. I heard them planning it. I tried to talk her out of it. What about Ruby? She's been crying since Friday. Keeps saying she didn't think you'd actually leave. She told me to get out. She's 16. She was parroting what Ada told her to say. Ada promised her you'd come back begging by Friday night. I thanked Caroline for the heads up and forwarded the whole conversation to Janet. She responded within minutes saying this was gold and to keep documenting everything. The rest of that week was quiet. I stayed at Kyle's place, went to work, avoided any contact with Ada. Janet was handling the paperwork. The court order for exclusive possession would be served in a few weeks. Everything was moving forward exactly as planned. Tuesday afternoon, Ada showed up at my workplace. Security called my office to let me know there was a woman in the lobby demanding to see me. I called Kyle and told him I needed backup. He was there in 5 minutes. We went down together so I'd have a witness. She looked rough, exhausted, makeup smeared, hair pulled back. She was sitting in the lobby chairs, clutching her purse. She stood when she saw me. Finally. Why haven't you answered any of my calls? Because I don't want to talk to you. We need to discuss this. You can't just walk out on your family. Kyle stepped up beside me. I gestured toward the seating area. Family. The family that shoved me aside for Mike? Please just come home. We can work this out. Her voice got softer, more pleading. Sign the divorce papers, Ada. She switched again. The pleading vanished, replaced with cold anger. She started listing everything I'd cut off. She demanded to know how she was supposed to survive. I suggested she get a job like she had when I met her. Security was approaching now. My manager had clearly called them when he saw the confrontation brewing. Ada saw them coming, and her voice rose, getting theatrical. You're abandoning a 16-year-old girl. What kind of man does that? The kind who got told to get out of his own house. I looked at the security guard. Please escort her out. They had to physically walk her to the parking lot. She was screaming the whole way about abandonment and cruelty. Half the office watched from the windows. My manager was waiting when Kyle and I got back upstairs. He asked if everything was okay. I told him it was a personal issue that wouldn't happen again. After he left, Kyle told me she was spiraling. I said good. Maybe she'd sign the divorce papers without a fight. Wednesday morning, Janet called with an update. Ada had hired a lawyer. Some guy named Dennis who'd already sent a demand letter asking for spousal support, half the house value, and retroactive child support for Ruby. I asked if he could get any of that. Janet said not a chance. House was mine before marriage. Ada quit her job voluntarily, and Ruby wasn't legally my child. Dennis was a bottom feeder who took cases he knew he'd lose because he got paid up front. He'd drag this out for a few months, bill Ada for every hour, then drop her when she couldn't pay. I asked how she was paying him now. Janet figured she'd probably borrowed from family, but it wouldn't last long. That afternoon, Caroline called with another warning. Ada was telling everyone I was abusive, that I'd controlled all the finances and isolated her from friends. Caroline said she'd been shutting it down wherever she could. Most of the family wasn't buying it because they'd all seen how Ada treated me. I called Janet immediately to fill her in. She didn't sound worried. She said to let Ada make accusations because the more she lied, the worse she'd look. But Janet wanted me wearing a body camera from now on. Any interaction with Ada needed to be recorded. I asked if that was legal. Janet confirmed we were in a single-party consent state. I was golden. Kyle had a body camera from some hiking trips. He brought it to work the next day and showed me how to use it. Clip it to my collar, press record. Simple. He said I might feel like a cop, but really, I was just covering my rear end. Ada was escalating, and this was smart. He was right. Thursday afternoon, Ada showed up at Kyle's apartment building. She must have followed me from work because she was waiting in the parking lot when I pulled up. I turned on the body camera before getting out of the truck. We need to talk. Talk to my lawyer. I'm your wife. We should be able to discuss this like adults. Adults don't pull the garbage you pulled at Thanksgiving. Move. She stood there blocking my path with this desperate look. I'm sorry. I don't know what else to say. I messed up. Please just come home. Sign the divorce papers. I can't afford it. Dennis wants $15,000 to represent me. Sounds like a you problem. Where am I supposed to get $15,000? Her voice was rising now. Maybe ask Mike. He seemed real comfortable in my house. Her face hardened. The mask slipped completely. You're enjoying this. You're enjoying watching me struggle. I'm enjoying not being disrespected in my own home. She tried one more angle. Tears started flowing, right on cue. She brought up Ruby again, saying Ruby was failing school and was depressed. She needed stability. I reminded her that Ruby had needed stability at Thanksgiving. Didn't stop her from screaming at me. I told Ada that Ruby was old enough to understand consequences. Not my kid, not my problem. I walked past her into Kyle's building. She didn't follow. Kyle was waiting inside and asked if I got all that. Every word. He told me to send it to Janet. I did. Her response came back in under an hour, saying this was exactly what she needed. The temporary orders were served on a Friday morning, about 3 weeks after I'd initially filed. Janet had filed for emergency relief as part of the divorce proceedings, requesting exclusive use of the marital home. Since I owned the house outright before the marriage and was the sole name on the deed, the judge granted it. 30 days for Ada to vacate. Standard notice period, even in divorce cases. My phone exploded with messages. Ada demanding to know where they were supposed to go. Her mother calling me a monster. Ruby saying she hated me and hoped I was happy ruining their lives. Mike, surprisingly, telling me this was between me and Ada and to leave his daughter alone. I only responded to Mike. Told him his daughter, his problem. She had a father now. Be one. He didn't respond to that. Saturday morning, Caroline called with an update. Ada had completely broken down when she got the court order. She'd been calling everyone in the family begging for money. Nobody was giving her anything because they all knew what she'd done. Her mother was the only one defending her, and even she didn't have the money to bail her out. Caroline mentioned that Dennis had dropped Ada as a client, sent her a letter saying he was withdrawing representation due to unpaid fees and irreconcilable differences in legal strategy. She was on her own now. The guy had worked for her for about 2 weeks, sent one demand letter, collected what money she could scrape together, then bailed when she couldn't pay more. I asked about the court order. Caroline confirmed it stood. 15 days left. If Ada wasn't out by then, the sheriff's department would enforce the order and remove her. She told me about Ruby. Said she's not well. She'd been skipping school and got suspended yesterday for telling a teacher to leave her alone. Ada couldn't control her. Mike could step up, but he'd blocked Ada's number and wanted nothing to do with this mess. Monday morning brought a new development. State Social Services called. A woman named Bella introduced herself and explained she'd received a report of child abandonment regarding Ruby Callahan. I clarified immediately that I wasn't Ruby's stepfather legally. Her mother and I were divorcing. Her biological father, Mike Callahan, had full custody on paper. Bella asked if I was financially responsible for Ruby. I explained there was never any adoption. She said they'd follow up with both parents and thanked me for clarifying. Wednesday brought the attempted police report. 2 officers showed up at Kyle's apartment that evening. I answered the door with the body camera running and my phone recording audio as backup. They said they needed to ask questions about a domestic dispute. I told them there was no dispute because I wasn't living with anyone. They said my wife had filed a report claiming I'd threatened her and my stepdaughter. I pulled out my phone and opened the cloud storage folder Janet had me set up. Told them I had video evidence of every interaction with my ex-wife and asked if they'd like to see it. The officers looked at each other. One asked if there'd been any physical altercation. I said no, I hadn't seen her since she showed up at my workplace last week, and I wouldn't let her near me. They asked about the stepdaughter. They asked a few more questions, took notes, and left. I called Janet immediately about the false police report. She asked if the cops believed it. I said no. They saw right through it. She said perfect. She'd add this to the filing. Caroline called that night with more updates. She'd become my inside source, feeding me information about what was happening at the house. Ada was trying to sell my stuff, posted my tools on Craigslist, tried to sell my golf clubs. She was desperate for money. I told Caroline to warn Ada that everything in that house was documented. If anything went missing, it was theft. Caroline said Ada wasn't listening to her anymore. Thought Caroline was betraying her by talking to me. I asked if Caroline was okay with that. She said she was okay with standing up for what was right. What Ada did was wrong, and she deserved what was happening. Then Caroline mentioned one more thing. Ruby had been writing me letters. Ada kept finding them and tearing them up. Caroline had managed to intercept one that Ruby had tried to give her to pass along, and she sent me a photo. It was handwritten on notebook paper. Ruby apologizing, saying she knew she messed up. Said she'd lost the best dad she ever had. She didn't expect forgiveness, just wanted me to know she understood now. I stared at that letter for a long time, then tossed it in the trash. The court-ordered move-out date was a Tuesday. I took the day off work and met Caroline at the house to oversee everything. Janet insisted I have a witness who could testify to the condition of the property. Ada was waiting on the front steps when we arrived. She looked defeated. "You're really doing this?" 30 days, just like the notice said. Where am I supposed to go? Not my problem. Caroline stayed close to me as we entered the house. Ada had packed most of their belongings into boxes stacked in the living room. The place was cleaner than I expected. She followed us through the rooms. I need more time. Please. The apartments all want first and last month's rent. You had 30 days. That's more than fair. I have Ruby to take care of. Where is Ruby? School. Didn't want her here for this. Caroline and I did a complete walkthrough. No damage, nothing missing. I took photos of every room. Ada watched silently, her earlier fight completely gone. As we finished the inspection, she tried one last time. 3 years of marriage. It has to mean something. It meant something until you threw it away. That's not fair. Fair was me showing up for 3 years. Fair was me raising your daughter. Fair was me paying for everything while you sat at home. You want fair? This is fair. She was crying now. I made one mistake. Doesn't that deserve a second chance? You made a calculated decision to humiliate me in front of your family. That wasn't a mistake. That was a choice. Live with it. The moving truck arrived at noon. 2 guys Ada had hired to move her stuff into whatever temporary place she'd found. Caroline and I supervised while they loaded boxes. Ada sat on the front steps the whole time, staring at nothing. When the truck was loaded, she stood up and handed me the house keys. Told me she'd signed the divorce papers and they were on the kitchen counter. I found them inside. She'd signed everything. No changes, no objections. It was over. Janet had the paperwork filed by end of day. The judge approved the uncontested divorce within 8 weeks. 3 years of marriage ended. The house sold in 2 weeks. I took the profit and put it toward a down payment on a smaller place closer to work. Fresh start, new neighborhood, no memories. Kyle helped me move in. 2 months after the divorce was finalized, Caroline called with one final update. Ada and Ruby were living with her mother now, both of them working. Mike had reached out once, offered to send $100 a month. That was it. Caroline said Ada was bitter, blamed me for everything, but she was working and paying her own bills. Ruby was in public school now. Grades had dropped. She acted out a lot, but she was learning consequences. She asked if I had any regrets. I told her no regrets at all. They wanted to teach me my place. Instead, they taught me my worth. Best lesson I ever learned. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.